Hey, good morning, everyone. Morning. Hi, Graham. We'll get started here. For those of you who don't know me, I happen to be the mayor. I'm Val Johnson, and I'm very happy to see all of you here today. It's a beautiful day. Thanks for sharing your morning with us. And I'm sure it was the donuts that brought all of you in, huh? So we have an action-packed day. I'm going to try first a little joke. Let's see if I can do this. So these three kids were playing outside, and they were talking as kids do. They're sitting on the curb, and the one kid says to the other, my dad is so fast that he can throw a ball and run down and catch it. The next kid says, well, that's nothing. My dad is so fast that he can shoot a gun and go down and hold the target before the bullet goes through. Third kid says, that's nothing. My dad works for the city. He works till 5. He's home by 4:30. So at any rate, I'm happy to have all of you here. We do have an action-packed day. We're going to be talking about things that are going to impact all of us. We're going to be talking about the changes that are coming to 35W and what that's going to mean for our city and for the traffic control and how we're going to manage the next couple of 3 years on that. We're also going to be talking about debt-free streets. What does that mean and how are we getting there? I've also asked the city manager, because I am just a water fanatic, to kind of update us a little bit on some of the things that are happening with water. All good. And then lastly, we have our typical and historic time with the council. So we'll have a panel, and we'll be able to take questions from the audience and answer any questions or concerns that you have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Dean Lauder, and let's get the program started. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Hey, thanks. Good morning, everyone. It's there's a concerning trend in our weather. There's a strange orb in the sky that's glowing and emitting heat. I'm told vitamin D goes with it as well. And so I appreciate the fact that you're all willing to come and spend some time with us this morning, despite the sunny day and the warmer temps that we're experiencing. I remember one time in a presentation that I was doing on the New Brighton Exchange and just redevelopment in general, there was a picture in there of a project that had just been built, but the picture was taken at a time where there was still snow all over it, and I thought, I probably shouldn't have that picture in the presentation. It's springtime and people want to associate with nice warm pictures, and of course it snowed that morning, so it was April 26th one year, I believe, and the picture fit just fine. But not so much today. So anyways, thank you for being here. I very much appreciate it. So do my staff and the council. We appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and share some information about our community. Like the mayor said, our first presentation is going to be about I-35. I-35 going up past New Brighton and north of New Brighton for a period of time is going to be under a lot of construction. And we all know that when you are adjacent to a major interstate that's under construction, a lot of that traffic finds its way into county and local streets. And so we do also have a guest from MNDOT who's here to also help with the presentation and field questions you might have. One of the things that I think you'll learn, which is going to be, I think, hopefully very appreciated throughout the course of that project, is that there are going to be some additional traffic mitigation efforts that I don't know we've always seen before, and that will hopefully help with some of the congestion, some of the wait times at intersections, things of that nature. And then when we're done with that, there is a map of the project posted up over on that wall. If you have additional questions about a specific area or an issue with that project, Craig and Mark will still be around. They can field your questions, help you get more information. Council felt pretty strongly that this was an important topic to address today, so that's why we're talking about that. So with that, Director Schlichting, Craig Schlichting, who's in charge of our Department of Community Assets and Development. Many of you have probably heard me say this before. It's a combination department. We consolidated our leadership a few years ago. So Craig is a PE, By background, he would ordinarily be what you would recognize as a public works director, but he also oversees the maintenance area. He also oversees community development. So big responsibility, but he's here today to talk about highway and roads.
Thank you, Manager Lauder, Mayor, members of the council, and the community. My role in this presentation is rather brief. With a project the size of the one we're about to talk about, there's a lot of planning and effort that goes into this. There's been many committees and discussion at MNDOT. Most recently, in 2011 to 2013, there was a managed lane study that was completed. That kind of set us up for what our recent engagement has been. Back in 2015, we had what's called an advisory committee that was made up of all the engineers from communities that touch MNDOT's roads, or 35W specifically. That included the Federal Highway Department engineers from MNDOT, folks of the like. We've had 21 meetings with that committee to kind of set the stage for what we're going to talk about today. So I have with me Mark Lindeberg. He's the North Metro Area Engineer for MNDOT, and he's going to talk about all the details of said project.
All right, thank you. Excuse me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And as Craig and Dean have said, I'm going to talk about 35W, what we call the 35W North MnPass project. Got a lot of information, but I'll certainly get through it and field any and all questions once we get done. So existing 35W today, I'm sure you guys all know, right outside New Brighton here, there's in excess of 106,000 vehicles that go through the area each and every day. Many bus routes, many hours of delay on every day, both AM and PM peak. There are 5 park and rides in the area, through the whole corridor of the 35 from between 36 up to Lexington Avenue, which is the main project limits of this project. Previous construction that has been done on the corridor, MNDOT, the 9 communities from within the project limits, both counties, we've all worked together for quite a few years to replace many of the bridges within the corridor. E2F, a couple that you guys are probably most familiar with, 96 with the diverging diamond. That one was led by the county, but we all worked together to get those things done so that a project of this magnitude could come through and do it all on 35 and not have to affect the local bridges in the area. Also, many of the pavement projects that we've done in recent past are just our normal pavement preservation projects that are typical of every, 7 to 12 years, depending upon certain things. As we started looking at the project, we had to figure out what is it that we want to do. And we wanted to replace the pavement. We wanted to get some travel through the corridor for reliable times, reliable trips, and get it such that it's sustainable for many years to come. We don't want to just get out there, put something down, and then not be able to maintain that. As we look at it, a lot of the questions we always hear is that why not just rebuild the 35W 694 interchange? We hear a lot of times that people say that that is the main source of the congestion, the main source of the problem. Well, when we looked at it, we found that that's not really truly the case. The 35W US 10 Commons area really caused a lot of that backup and a lot of the problems. So just rebuilding the 694 interchange wasn't going to solve the problem on 35W. So then the next question we always hear is, well, why not just add another general purpose lane to 35W? That'll solve all our problems. Well, that's not necessarily always true. Whoop, I went the wrong way. Now I'll get back to where I was. So the big thing, right, is the $2.5 billion. If we wanted to add general purpose lane, one general purpose lane isn't going to do it in each direction. We would have to go 2. And with 2 lanes, that requires a lot of right-of-way. It requires right-of-way from homes, businesses, and just property. So that price tag goes up really, really quick. And it doesn't necessarily provide for reliable travel times, and we don't know how long that truly lasts. So we found that the solution was going to be MinPass. With MinPass, you can have reliable travel times. It moves 10% more people through the corridor. And the way we try to manage the MinPass lane is such that vehicles are moving at least 45 miles per hour, total of 90% of the time. And that's only during the 3 hours or 4 hours of peak time each and every day. And as you can see, a general purpose lane will move 12,000 trips, so 12,000 vehicles, whereas a MinPass lane will move 21,000. So there's a big difference there. What is MinPass, right? MinPass is our lane that we can put in there that during peak periods, you have to pay to be in the lane or have more than one person in your vehicle. And that's, again, 4 hours a day during the peak periods. The other 20 hours a day, that lane is now open to everyone. So that really gets to the point where we can really help with the traffic volumes. If you want more about that, obviously minpass.org is our website for that. So construction of this project, as we said before, the map is over there. It's about a 12-mile long corridor, and we're going to do that through design build. We're planning on letting the project this fall with construction slated to begin most likely in the spring of 2019. That being said, you will see some work into the corridor yet this summer, because we do have two separate projects that are going to be let ahead of the MinPass project. The first one is going to be to build the crossovers on 35W to set up so that we can hit the ground running in the springtime. The other project that we're letting is a mill and overlay project on 35 south of these project limits, so essentially from 36 down into Minneapolis. So we will see work out on the roadway this summer. It's all tied to MinPass, but it won't actually be the MinPass project. So for staging of the project and come spring of 2019, what we're planning for, and the contractor can always change this, but what we're planning for is that what we will do is we'll take traffic in the southbound direction and we'll switch it over onto the northbound lanes. We will be reducing 35W to 2 lanes in each direction, and they'll be driving on the northbound side while the southbound lanes are constructed. So on the map, the orange is what we're going to be working on, and then the white would be where the vehicles would be traveling, and we have to turn our head to the right to see north. Then come winter, we will put everybody back into their normal travel lanes, and you would drive on 35 just like you do today and get you through the corridor. Now, right now we're saying for stage one, I'm not exactly sure that we're going to be able to complete that in just the first year of 2019. So there's a little bit of a gray area as to exactly when stage one ends. It could be that stage one and stage two each take about 1.5 years. So some of the dates are a little bit gray because it will depend upon the contractor's schedule. So during that first year of construction, as we worked with the Federal Highway Administration and we developed the traffic plan for it, and we're working in the southbound direction, there will be quite a bit of access that will have to be closed in order for us to build mainline 35W. We are going to do our best to keep as much of that access open as possible, but access will be limited and restricted to a certain extent. There's just no way we can build it and keep all access open. Then stage two, as we're calling it, we'll flip traffic over onto the southbound lanes, and while we construct the northbound lanes. The good part about that is that we will now have 5 lanes in the southbound direction. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to take that center lane and that's going to become a reversible lane. So in the AM peak, we will have 3 lanes going in the southbound lane and 2 lanes headed north. And then in the PM peak, we flip that lane over, and we'll keep 3 lanes in the northbound direction. That was quite an expensive opportunity for us to do that, but it was certainly well worth the cost when you talk about the number of vehicles that get through this corridor and the delay that it would save just by having that additional capacity during construction. Again, after stage 2 for the winter of 2020, we'll get everybody back onto their normal travel lanes and then come back. And then stage 3, which right now we're planning for the 4th year of construction, we'll construct the north end, basically north of County Road J. And that it shouldn't be all that intrusive compared to the first 3 years, but we'll keep our fingers crossed on that one. Then as a part of all of that, as was alluded to, MNDOT did do something different on this project than we've really ever done on any other project, and we really looked at what was going to happen to traffic during construction. MNDOT knows that we have vehicles that will follow our detour routes, but we also know that there's plenty of traffic out there that doesn't like to follow our routes, and they will jump off and they will go on to some of the local and county roads. So what we did is we did a pretty deep analysis. I think Craig would agree with that. We looked at over 30 different local intersections throughout the corridor and local roadways to see what measures MNDOT could take as a part of the project and make some temporary fixes in the local roads to help alleviate some of that stuff. Some of the we'll go through a lot of them. I think New Brighton had 19 different options at 18 different locations, and I implemented about 15 of them, or some of my numbers might be wrong there, but so there's a lot going on in New Brighton with that. But this is something that MNDOT really has never done, and I think we will do more and more of it, but it is something that will be different than what we've normally seen. And again, I stress, all these things that we're making, all these changes that we're making are going to be temporary in nature, at least for the life of the project. And then if things want to remain that way, that's up for discussion with Craig and maybe the county. So starting with some of the temporary fixes that we're going to make is the Long Lake Road and the westbound ramps. So the issue is, right, we're going to see an increase in traffic there. And what can we do to try and help that? So what we're going to do is we're going to put a temporary signal in to try and help alleviate the increase in traffic and make traffic be able to flow through the area better. Also, on the south side of that interchange, right, again, you can see that the volumes are going to increase by, somewhere from 100 to 300 vehicles during the peak hours. So again, we're going to install a temporary signal system into that area, and we're going to kind of change some of the striping that's going to redirect the flow of traffic through the area in order to hopefully make traffic flow through to that whole area much smoother. We are also going to, both of those signals at the 2 ramps, we're going to connect those and coordinate them so that they work together better and allows the traffic to flow through more smoothly. 8th Avenue Northwest and 10th Street. So we've got a problem into the fact that the northbound lefts, the volume is going to increase by about 300 vehicles in the peak hour, and that causes an excessive amount of delay in that area. So we are going to convert the northbound right turn lane into a shared northbound right, northbound left. We're going to coordinate this, and we're going to coordinate this with the signals over at 694. So what we have to do, right, is just update some of the striping to make that happen, and install a sign up on the mast arm so that people know that that's what's going to happen there. 8th Avenue and 7th Street, cars are going to, the eastbound lefts are going to increase by about 25, and the northbound throughs by about 300. So we're thinking that that's going to cause an issue to finding a gap for those left turns. So it will cause too much delay in there. So again, we are going to change that from a side street stop to the installation of a temporary signal, and then coordinate it with the other signals around it so that, again, it flows much better. Old Highway 8 and First Street. So I guess right now the volumes kind of warrant a signal to possibly go in there. And with the increase in the southbound through and the northbound throughs, we're going to have a lot of delay through the area. So going to be putting in, again, a temporary signal system. And I think our local partners, the city and the county's involved into that one, right? We're going to look at the opportunity to put in a permanent signal at some point in time, maybe following the project. Old Highway 8 and 8th Avenue. Again, you can see that we're still talking 100, 150 vehicles increased, an increase in the delay through the area. So this is this is a location where we looked at multiple different fixes. We fell on the fact that we're going to do some channelization. The southbound left turn is going to be essentially removed from the ability to be used. So if you're headed south, you're going to have to take the right-hand turn in order to eliminate a lot of the delay at the intersection and allow traffic to continue to flow. We are going to put in some temporary pork chops to help direct the traffic through the area, so it won't just be paint. So hopefully vehicles aren't jumping those curbs and ignoring what they're supposed to be doing. So County Road E2 and Cleveland Avenue. We're, again, obviously going to see an increase in traffic through the area. So we are going to install, again, a temporary signal into that area. And we are going to, I'll just go to the next slide, because we're going to coordinate that with the ramps on the east side of 35W and E2. If any of you drive 35E at Little Canada Road on the west side there's a couple signals real close together, and this location at Cleveland and E2 is going to operate very similar to that they'll get the two signals working together, almost like it's just one signal, so that the traffic can flow through the area. And I think the key for this one here is in stage 2, while MnDOT's constructing the northbound area, or the northbound lanes, there's a time when these ramps will be closed, and when those ramps are closed, there won't be a need for the signal at the ramp, so those will kind of be turned off, and then there'll be a simple operating signal at Cleveland Avenue. Over on the westbound side, really what we're going to do is we're going to remove the existing the existing stops, because especially in stage 1, those ramps on the west side are going to be closed. So the through traffic will just be able to go through there and again, help traffic get through the area and not slow it down so much. West County Road D, County Road 88. So we're going to have a lot of delay for the northbound approach. Once you start looking at the northbound rights, the eastbound throughs, the westbound throughs, increase of upwards of 250 vehicles. We're going to have too much delay through the area, so we are going to convert the northbound through to a left turn, allow that opportunities for more vehicles to make that left. And as you can see, the red X's, that ramp will end up being closed while we construct the northbound section there. So we are going to coordinate the signals in the area, again, retime them all so that they all work together, and you can get through the area. County Road D and Long Lake Road, we have several hundred vehicle increase. So we are going to coordinate the signals, again, with the previous slide and this slide, coordinate the signals, create some gaps, get traffic flowing. West County Road D, then the southbound ramps. Again, we're going to coordinate. These three were kind of all tied together, that we're just going to really coordinate the signal timing. 3 signals in a relatively short distance doesn't always work well, so when we coordinate the timing, we can get the cars to get through there and not have to stop at each and every signal. West County Road D and the northbound ramps. Again, we're going to take that right lane and make it so that you can go right through or left out of that to help with the increase in the left turns. And we will, again, coordinate the signals there. County Road D and Cleveland Avenue, northbound lefts, northbounds through, and the eastbound lefts cause a lot of delay. So we are going to coordinate the signals and get them to be optimized at that location. Now, noise walls. We've got 7 noise walls that are being constructed into the whole project, 2 of which are in the city of New Brighton. On the east side, south of the railroad tracks down to County Road D, and on the west side, just north of County Road E2, all the way up to County Road F. Our plan is to have the contractor build those noise walls at the same time or ahead of any work being done on 35W in the area of where that noise wall is going in. So when there's any work right just north of 35W, we want the noise walls at north of E2 to be constructed so the residents have as little construction noise as possible. It's not going to be eliminated, but at least we're going to do what we can to eliminate as much as we can. Just a picture of what the noise wall, at least at the County Road D, is going to look like with the planks going and then the colored posts. So you can at least have a representation of what it looks like. The residents that are going to realize a benefit from the noise walls have obviously already been contacted. They've voted on it. The noise walls got approved, so they've all seen what they're going to look like. And MNDOT also intends to go out and meet with many of the property owners that are going to have a noise wall in their backyard. Hopefully we can get to that yet this summer, but they're not. Those meetings are not scheduled as of yet. Yes, those are permanent noise walls that will remain in place. Yep. Again, something a little bit different than we've done in the past. MNDOT is going to be hiring a consultant to have a public engagement contract for the 4 years of the project, and actually even longer than that because we're hoping to get that contract underway this summer ahead of any construction on the project. That public engagement contract is really going to be out there so that MNDOT can find a way to get out to the local communities, the local businesses, work with city councils, work with business councils, chambers, anything we can do to keep the public updated on any of the work that's going on, whether it's traffic switches, whether it's the construction of noise walls, whether it's the fact that there's going to be an access change coming up. We want to be out in the public making sure that you guys are all aware of that. So we are going to have a multi-year contract with a public engagement company so that we can work with each of the communities, none of which are going to want the same thing, right? Everybody's going to want a different piece of information or information in different ways as the project progresses. So we're going to try to be real flexible and be out in the communities conveying this information to you and throughout the length of the contract. So it's going to be, hopefully it's going to be a really cool opportunity. Hopefully we stay out in front and you guys don't miss any information whatsoever as a part of the project. As a part of that, right, we've got the project website. On that project website, there is a spot where you can sign up to get email notifications so that anything that comes as a part of this project, you will be notified for that. It's a great way to stay informed. You can do it for many, many different projects. You don't have to just do it for this project, but would really be good if you did that because you can't hardly miss any information, at least if it's coming into your in-basket you have that opportunity to see it. I am Mark Lindeberg. I'm on the left side of that screen. Those my email and my phone number. Feel free to give me a holler. Sheila is my boss. You can certainly send her emails or call her, but I'm going to just be honest with you. You stand a better chance of catching me. She's a lot busier than I am. So I'm tied to this project. This will be a lot of my time, so please feel free. And that is the end of it, but I will leave it on that slide in case anybody wants that website. And we'll go into questions, I'm assuming.
As 35W works now, northbound, if you're going from H, I believe it would be County Road H, and you're on the merge lane, in the next half mile or so, there are 2 exit onlys. So as you are in that merge lane, you typically, you have to, and you're going to stay on 35W, you have to cross 2 lanes. And most people, when they're doing that, do it in the first 100 feet or so of that merge lane. And that's a real traffic problem that I've encountered several times. Now, when the North Lane project is completed, will that be any different?
Great question. And I'd be happy to go through the exact details of that with you on the layout. But yes, essentially the way that we're looking at this, yes, to a certain extent, right? Because we're going to construct 2 lanes from US 10 westbound down in Arden Hills to come onto 35. And those 2 lanes will stay there, and they're going to continue on to US 10 westbound on the north end. So when you're coming on at H, you're still going to have to move over, but it's going to be dependent on whether you want to go to US 10 or stay north onto 35W. So if you're going to stay on 35W, then you do have to continue to move over. Yep, so we are not going to eliminate that. We can't eliminate that move to keep you over there. And that's one of the reasons that we, MNDOT, had that loop removed that would go north on 35W from County Road I, is because that was even worse than the County Road H opportunity.
A very brief question. I assume that this information will be continually available via the City of New Brighton website, so that
Absolutely. We'll have all the links to this information. My cards are in the hallway if you want to reach somebody locally, if there's some other concern that's more about New Brighton roadways than MNDOT roadways and how we're impacted by this improvement, by all means reach out to me, but we'll keep you posted on MNDOT's updates on our website as well.
I noticed you addressed the additional traffic on Long Lake Road, which is west of the I-694 35W intersection. What about Silver Lake Road, which is the next exit down from Long Lake Road? Silver Lake Road is a particular issue because of the kids that are crossing over I-694 to get to Highview Middle School. And we recently had an incident where a car actually ran into a bicycle, and it's kind of a troublesome intersection there, or crossover. Has anyone looked at additional traffic on Silver Lake Road?
I guess I'll start with that one. When we talk about traffic finding local corridors for an alternate route, we're saying anything within 2 miles of 35W could see some additional traffic. As far as Silver Lake Road goes, there we'll look at signal timing. We didn't see the same delays that we did on some of these other roadways. One ancillary improvement that we're working on with the county is the trail crossing up by the railroad tracks on Silver Lake Road. That was where we had a bike incident with a car. And we'll be looking to do that this summer or next, likely this summer, to make that a safer crossing with a refuge in the middle of Silver Lake Road.
Oh, hey. This is more of a New Brighton question probably, but what's the deal with the road going under the train track bridge on Old 8 right before County E? Like, can that be expanded ever, or is that just forever 2-lane? I feel like that's a huge bottleneck in all this.
Yeah, so that's a county road, but there aren't plans to expand the railroad bridge in that location. A lot of the delay that we talked about here is because of the intersection with E on that roadway. So when Mark talked about permanent improvements at that location, a signal and or a roundabout is likely something we'll see at that location because people stop on northbound coming under that old Highway 8 bridge, and then they just back up as far as the apartments and further whenever we have anything going on 35W. So anything we do in terms of mitigation there for a permanent improvement will help that, but we don't have plans to widen that roadway.
Well, see, oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. First of all, Mark, I want to thank you for being here today. And I'm really proud to see the changes in MNDOT over the years. And I want to thank you for looking at and mitigating the impact on our local roadways. So thank you very much. And I also appreciate the public engagement. You know, I've been working on that for years, and I see positive outcomes to be really communicating with the community from start to finish. So thank you very much. And to New Brighton for being so actively involved in this. So first of all, I want to thank you. Second of all, I just want to ask, are there any, what I want to make sure has been addressed is the pedestrian and the bicycle use in these corridors and what will be impacted by it. I know Mr. Jacobson, who's here, has worked a lot on pedestrian safety in our community, as well as many other people. So has that been addressed? Because when I hear pork chop, I think of free right lanes where it's difficult for pedestrians to safely cross. So have you looked into that to make sure that we're not going to have any serious injuries or fatalities? And I know you can't guarantee that, but we can plan to help the outcome be positive, not negative.
It looks like we're both looking at each other like, what? No. We did talk about this with another one of Mark's colleagues, Jerome Adams, as part of this project. When we have a signal, we'll certainly look to enhance the pedestrian crossings there. I'm not saying you're going to have a push-button activated piece as part of a temporary signal, but a crosswalk, having a signal versus a stop sign certainly allows more of an ability to get from one side of the road to the other. Specifically at Long Lake, but I don't know if we have a lot of cross pedestrian traffic there. It's more kind of north-south and bikes heading on the west side of Long Lake Road. That seems to be where we have most of our issues with the biking community. I don't know if there are other issues with pedestrians that we're looking to specifically address. We'll continue with what we have for the actuated button locations like at 10th Street and Old Highway 8, but we don't have additional measures beyond that.
Just to take a little bit, I think that while we may not be doing, you know, the gold-plated standard of pedestrian, you know, on these temporary fixes, I think it was certainly in the realm of our thought process as we were looking at them. And then when those opportunities went to the city and the council looked at them, all that stuff I think had to be factored into it as to if this is too much of a detriment to a pedestrian, a bicycle, you know, the residents, then the council said no to those, some of those mitigations. I showed all the mitigations that were voted up by the city. There were other ones that were voted down, and they were for various reasons. So my perspective is I think that the bike and ped opportunities are involved, are encompassed into the whole overlying picture of it. But I can't, obviously, I mean, you said it, right? We can't guarantee that there won't be any crashes or any fatalities. But I do feel that at least it was looked at, it was a part of the thought process, and then decisions made based on those types of information.
I'd like to just go back to the intersection on Silver Lake Road and the railroad crossing. Irrespective of the 35W project, that has been a problem for years and years. And so when you mention it, I'm wondering if you have anything specific to do with that intersection. Specific.
I'll take that one. This is going to be a county-led project, and they're going to look to widen out the west side of the Silver Lake Road lanes to allow a median to be constructed down the middle of Silver Lake Road at that location. Additional measures like the rapid flashing beacons like we have outside of the community center here will be part of that consideration for the specific things that you're looking for. Yeah, so the question was Silver Lake Road, as you head northbound, they stopped the widening to include medians at Rice Creek Road or Mississippi there, and just kind of had the 2 northbound, 2 southbound lanes. So what we're talking about here isn't kind of from Mississippi all the way up to H, but it's more dedicated to just the location with the railroad to allow for that improved pedestrian movement. So it isn't going to be all the way. It's just going to bump people out, allow for that refuge in the middle, and get you along Rice Creek Trail, which is kind of parallel to the tracks. So the question here is, will it solve the problem of Aaron Court and Silver Lake Road? I believe the railroad is very close to Aaron Court there, so you'll have to go southbound to intersect with the Rice Creek Regional Trail and then cross at that location. We'd prefer you to go at the dedicated crossing locations.
I believe most of this project was planned before the city bought the properties on Old 8, the old school, and then the engineering company. And I'm wondering if something can be done with the planning on those properties to alleviate the problem on 8 and 88. That's been a problem, and it didn't seem that it's going to get worse in terms of people coming 8 and then having to turn left to get out to E2. You're going to have to turn right is what I heard, I think, and then make a U-turn to go the other way.
So just for clarity there, if you're on 8th Avenue heading south, indeed you will have to take a right onto Old 8. We're hoping that those that know the corridor will go or stay on 10th Street and use Old Highway 8 to continue south to E2 to get onto 35 or cross over 35. We ran into issues with people wanting to take a left from 8th Avenue onto Old Highway 8, where it created a dangerous situation, something we didn't want to engage in, or have people kind of trying to shortcut and go through given neighborhoods. So we think this will be best suited to deal with local traffic and or the regional traffic hitting the corridor. Dealing with the what's known as the Korean Church property and the properties adjacent to Old Highway 8, we are working with a consultant on looking at Old Highway 8 from 8th Avenue all the way down to County Road E. What can be done with that corridor? We have 5 lanes of traffic, so 2 in each direction and a center turn lane. There's opportunities to include a better pedestrian movement through there, dedicated turning lanes, maybe even a roundabout at Old 8 and 8th Avenue that improves the traffic just moving throughout that corridor indefinitely. So we're definitely looking at that as part of this. Looks like one more question, and then we'll kind of go over to our little map and have specifics.
It's not really a question. I would just like to reiterate what Representative Bernardi said. As I've sat on the city council for years and been part of this city for most of my life, I can't remember a time where community engagement has been so important for a project. And all this discussion has happened. I don't know how many meetings have been held throughout our community. I want to thank Mark for that. I know that you've been to all the cities that are impacted. And I just want to point out that this has been discussed, these different intersections, different options, and how important it is for our community to understand that we're working through these. Even the intersection that we're talking about, lastly, about near the New Brighton School, Matafee. We've talked about that's going to be an impact on traffic in the future, and this is a good opportunity for us to look at what changes might be made, and it's a good test site to see how we're going to make those changes in the future as we develop that corner. So again, I just want to thank you for really getting involved with all the different cities and the county and the residents, giving us the opportunity to be part of this project.
Thank you, Mark. So with that, Mark and I will go over to the map here. If you have specific questions, I'm going to hand the mic back to Manager Lauder and give you more instruction.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the questions. We're actually just a little ahead of schedule, so we will take our break, though. If you have more project-specific questions, please go take a look at the map and interact with those two. Before everyone leaves, though, I would like to just make sure that I point out that our delegation is here, and I just want to mention that Representative Connie Bernardi is here. Representative Mary Kunish-Podine, and Senator Carolyn Lane. And they've promised me that they brought their Captain Crunch decoder rings, and so they can make sense out of the Minnesota State Legislature on any issue. And so if you need to ask a question about what's happening at the Capitol, they're here for that reason. And of course, I probably oversold there a little bit. But we're going to take a break, so please get up, stretch your legs, talk with the folks out in the hallway, talk with Craig and Mark, and we'll meet back here at 10:15. And welcome back to our regularly scheduled program. Our next presentation is actually kind of carrying forward just a little bit or dovetailing off of the first presentation. We're going to have kind of a dual presentation here with Director Schlichting and Director Brenda Davitt, our Finance Director. The council and the city staff have been working on an initiative for a few years now, and we will continue to be working on it, called Debt-Free Streets. Most cities, when they're reconstructing major infrastructure, have to borrow that money because it's so expensive. You basically have to go and take out a loan. What we're trying to do is not have to take out a loan. We want to save the costs of interest. We want to save the costs of issuance. We want to save all those other costs that go with borrowing. And so Craig and Brenda are actually kind of the dynamic duo that are spearheading that or carrying forward that particular program. And who's going first? Craig, are you starting? All right, so I'll hand it back to Craig, and then Brenda will also be presenting on this topic. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you. Hello again. Just to start off, I kind of want to talk about what the street program is and what projects are involved with that. Street reconstruction in its simplest form is taking up the asphalt with a milling machine as shown in the lower right and basically putting back new asphalt after you regrade the gravel. New Brighton has a comprehensive street plan in which we say every street within the city will be reconstructed within 25 to 30 years of its initial construction. That's something that's been adopted by the council. When you look at our total of mileage within the city, we have about 64 miles of streets. If you did an average 30-year replacement, that would equate to about 2 miles of streets being reconstructed each and every year. Back in 2015, we looked at what we had done in the period of 10 years from 2006 to 2015, and we only reconstructed 8 miles of streets. If we had our average of 2 miles of streets per year, we should be looking at about 20 miles of streets. Why we saw this as an issue was our next two periods of 10 years, which is 2016 to 2025 and 2026 to 2035, we were looking at 26 and 30 miles of streets within those periods. That means we'd have to collect more taxes, more levy to deal with those projects over that period of time. So we took advantage of that knowledge, worked with the council, moved some streets around. To move them around, we basically plan on doing a mill and overlay, which is we take 2 inches of asphalt off, put another brand new 2 inches of asphalt down, and get you another 10 to 15 years before we have to fully reconstruct. So by doing that, we now have the good, and the good. So about 21 miles of streets for each and every 10-year period. So when you look at the city, this is our nice little color-coded map. We have about 2 miles of streets each and every year. Each color on this map indicates a street in a given area of the city that is going to be reconstructed in that year. The upcoming project is actually in and around Pike Lake on the west side. We heard this morning about some bridge improvement projects that we did. So F or 10th Street Bridge and the E2 Bridge. Those projects are in and around this location. We combo plattered those projects with the MNDOT improvements to see a bigger benefit for the area and not hit those people twice with an impact. So what do we look at when we reconstruct streets? We're not just looking at the streets. If it was as simple as that, we could move streets around based on their condition and just move one up, move one back. We also have to be cognizant of flooding that's happened in the past. We had a nice storm in 2011 that indicated a lot of our problem areas where we might need some more storage capacity or larger catch basins. We have areas in the city that are constructed over clay. And when you combine clay material with our cast iron pipes, we've had a larger history of water main breaks. So when you have a lot of water main breaks, we have to plan for that improvement, and that also adds an expense that we're trying to save for. Just to look at the condition of streets themselves, we have our streets crew go out and identify how much we are putting down for material, how many potholes do we have on that given section of street, how many cracks, what sort of maintenance level are we looking at. So that all rolls up into some plan, and we put it on paper, and then we also need to look at shifting things around based on things that kind of rise to the top as things change over time. So this is just an image of some of the stuff that's happened. 2011, we had a large storm event. That's down in the lower left. We've had a number of water breaks up on the upper left. So with this year's street reconstruction project, as an example, we have about a mile of water main that we're replacing. So cast iron pipe and clay, we'll replace that with ductile iron, which has a less chance of breaking over time. What we want to avoid is a street looking like that, which requires a lot of our maintenance crew to do stuff like this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brenda for a bunch of the details on our financing plan moving forward.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you. I am the finance director, but I do want to warn you, I'm not going to fill your head with a bunch of numbers this morning. What I want to do is sell a wonderful plan that we have that will enable the city to become financial sustainable in the future. I know Director Schlichting talked to you about our new plan of reconstructing roughly 2 miles of streets every year. After we came up with the plan, we put some cost to that plan. And as you can see, over the next 20 years, the city is going to need roughly $58 million to reconstruct our streets. It's a lot of money. Now, that does not include water, sewer, or our storm costs. So, if we had not been directed by council to try to even out the years, we would have seen an additional 13 miles of streets needed to be reconstructed during the same time frame. That actually would have added an additional $20 million onto our already $58 million of need here. So you're looking at all those streets. The typical average cost of a street reconstruction plan is roughly $3 million. Okay? And you're looking at that graph and you're going, all right, we kind of like stabilized the mileage. How come there's such a difference? How come I'm seeing the cost, difference in variance in costs? Well, those cost differences can be due to some of them being MSA streets. MSA streets are wider than your normal residential streets, which actually create more costs. You have some of our streets are still concrete versus asphalt, which create a lot more larger cost to dig them up and dispose of the concrete. And then we still have mileage. Even though we tried to stabilize the mileage every year, Director Schlichting, in that map, you notice that our reconstruction tries to go around neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods have more mileage than others. An example here, we have the year 2031. versus the year 2033. There's actually 1 mile difference between those years and what's planned on being reconstructed. So once we have the costs for our street reconstructions put together, then we can put together a financing plan. All right, our financing plan includes loans, 10-year loans, using 3% interest. Once we have that financing plan put in place, we can determine or estimate the amount of annual levy that we are going to need to pay back our loans. This particular graph is showing you what we're going to need in levy to the next 20 years. This graph does not include any local government aid contributions to the city, and I will go into that a little bit later into the presentation. But what I want to point out to you is that because we are only doing 2 miles of streets roughly every year, you're going to see a slow increase in our levy needs from 2018 to 2024. Because we started this program in 2015, and they're all based off of a 10-year cycle, in the year 2024, then we start seeing our streets, one going off and another one going on. So you'll see more of a levy, more of a even levy needs throughout the year. And of course, it does go up based off of the inflation and cost of roads. So how many out there, I want to see a show of hands, don't like debt? Great, you guys are going to love this program. What we have done for you is we have started using an internal loan program. So what does that mean? It means we are borrowing money to ourselves. That internal loan, more like a revolving fund, is being paid back with levy that we would have put on if we had borrowed that money from an outside investor. So the cost to you is not more or less than what we would have needed, however we are financing our program. The benefit of this program, what you're going to see, is that all of our external debt, principal debt that we hold, is going to be retired by the year 2034. And you notice that with the green section is all of the principal, outstanding principal that we will be owing ourselves. The orange bars section is actually what we still will be owing to our external investors. The bars that show the asterisks on top are still years that the city will need to issue external debt until we can get the revolving fund lucrative enough to keep turning over our internal loans. Now, why do we want to use internal loans? What are the benefits of doing the internal loans? The first benefit is a better credit rating. Unlike our own personal credits, where our scores increase with more debt we have and how fast we pay it or on time we pay it, we get a better score. Local governments don't work that way. Our credit, we get a better credit score based off of how much ratio of our total debt payments are to our total governmental expenditures. So the less debt, external debt payments we have to our total expenditures, we get a better score. Now you can see that the city, even though we were originally planning with our original plan, if we have to go with external debt, we're not bad. But look how much better we are using internal loans, and we actually dropped to nothing in 2034. Now, if you had to make loan payments, how many of you would prefer to pay yourself back than another person? I would think we all would, right? In this particular program, in the 20-year cycle, it is estimated that the city will pay close to $6.7 million in interest. It has been projected, using the internal loan program that we would be paying ourselves back. Oops, wrong button. We'd be paying ourselves back roughly $5.2 million. It's going back to us, not to somebody else. We still have roughly $1.4 million scheduled to go to an outside investor. Okay, those of you who have ever taken out a mortgage understand that there's closing cost to receive that financing, right? Well, very similar to taking out a mortgage, the city also receives or has to pay issuance costs. Here's an example of the last issuance the city did was in the year 2015 for roughly $1.7 million. It cost the city $28,000 in closing costs to pay for a rating agency for our credit score, our financial advisors to help us with the bond issuance, and our bond attorneys to make sure everything is legal. But besides our closing costs, there's also ongoing costs with all of our debt. Annual costs, such as our paying agent fees to ensure that all our regulatory requirements are met. And of course, the IRS doesn't want the cities and local governments making money off of issuing debt. And that is, they don't want you to issue debt at 3% and then reinvest it at 4 or 5. So you have to have all these arbitrage. That's called arbitrage. And you have to have all these calculations done and reports turned into the IRS on an annual basis. So those costs are costing us roughly $1,000 a year. And of course, these loans are 10 years in length. So adding another $10,000 to costs to all of our outside issuances, of which the city saves by borrowing the money ourselves. Last but not least, what I love the best is the flexibility of this program. With using this program, the council controls your debt, okay? They control the terms. Right now, it's all programmed at 10 years, all right? If the program becomes lucrative, they can say, all right, we can turn that loan and stop paying it. So it becomes a 5-year loan. Or if they see that maybe the levy payments are too high, they can say, okay, we want to make it a longer loan. Let's start adding a few more years to make the levy amount go down a little bit. We also have flexibility on our interest rates. They're all set at 3%. It's kind of what you're getting nowadays if you go out and look for a loan. Again, if the program is looking, the revolving fund is showing profits or is very lucrative, that interest rate can go down to nothing. And the last one is the payment amount. And the flexibility on the payment amount, actually, you as residents are going to see that in the next budget cycle. And how that is we have used an internal loan for our 2017 road reconstruction project, okay? What normally happens is if the city needs to go out and issue debt for a project, we do it after a feasibility report is written so that we have cash flow in order to make those construction payments on time. Now, do you guys know what a feasibility report is? Director Schlichting, do you want to explain a feasibility report?
Yeah, a feasibility report is basically identifying all of the real costs that we'd anticipate. As you can see, a lot of the planning we do is 10, 20, 30 years out. You put a cost together for that in advance, and as you approach the real project, we may go out and do an inventory of all our catch basins throughout a project and say, we've got to replace 10 more than we thought. Have we saved enough for that? Certainly, I hope so. Otherwise, it wouldn't be feasible to continue down that path. So just a lot of things can come up in our identifying of the real costs, and we want to make sure that what we project out there, we know how we're going to fund it.
Thank you. All right, so what happened during the 2017 road reconstruction project is the actual bid that the contractor gave us was way less than the feasibility report came in. So if we had gone out and received external debt for that particular project, we would have asked for way more than what we needed. And those payments would have been set that we would have had to make every year based off of the term of that those bonds. But because we borrowed the money internally, the amount of money that we are placing on for debt levy has decreased. We can decrease it ourselves because there is no external requirement. Now, earlier I talked to you about what is local government aid. So what is local government aid? It's a general purpose aid that the state allocates to local governments based off a formula set in state statutes. Now, can the city depend on this aid? Well, the history in New Brighton was we were receiving roughly $700,000 in state aid up until the year 2003, when the state was having their own funding difficulties and they stopped the payments. Back in 2014, the state started the program all over, and the city started receiving local government aid. At that time, it was council's directive to give that money back to the citizens. But how that was done was this aid was deposited into the general fund, which is our primary operating fund of the city. Now, we've already told you or mentioned that this is unreliable revenue source to be put into a fund that pays for most of the city's core functions. So then council's directive was to slowly move that money out of the general fund. And where we decided to put it, to give it back to you, is into the street reconstruction fund. And by putting it into the street reconstruction fund, which is set with a plan that if we didn't, you're already seeing what the levy would be without the local government aid. If we continue to receive the local government aid, those payments can only go down. So it's more of a benefit versus if it stops, you're not going to see any hindrance because we are not receiving it. And just to give you a heads up, in 2019, I think, our legislatures are here. It is understood, I understand that the city will continue to receive that aid. I believe there's talks of allocating it out to local governments in 2019. Now what I want to do for you is also to give a little promo on some other external debt-free programs the city has besides what we're trying to do with our streets. We have what's called the Community Reinvestment Fund. Now, this Community Reinvestment Fund is the revenues come from excess fund balance from the general fund, or the savings from the general fund goes into this particular fund. How the city is currently using this fund, again, is internal loans. But the internal loans are going to our utility funds because our utility funds, as well as our streets, are seeing the high expenses for the infrastructure due to our road reconstruction projects. Our utility funds then pay back the Community Reinvestment Fund with a 3% interest. We also have our fleet, non-fleet, information technology, and pavement management replacement funds. How these work is that our departments come up with a list, or we have all of our large capital assets that the city owns, and we determine, all right, when do we want to or need to replace that asset, such as a car. We can use this as an example. You in a car. You buy a car, you want to replace it in 5 years. So what do? You start putting away a little bit of money each year until you have enough money ready, available to buy that car in 5 years. That's how these particular plans work. We put a little bit away every year so that there's money available at the time when these assets need to be replaced. The last one I want to talk to you about is the Municipal Development Fund. Now, the Municipal Development Fund, we just had a great example on how that is used without using external debt, and that's the purchase of the new Brighton Elementary Korean Church site. That was $1.9 million that we had available in this fund to use to help with redevelopment. The Municipal Development Fund receives its money through interfund loans with our redevelopment districts, and it gets paid back using 4% interest. Now here's a brief snapshot of the Fleet Replacement Fund in the next 10 years from our So so what we've got planned is roughly $8 million to replace our fleet. And on the right side, you're seeing some of the items that are in that plan to be replaced and how expensive they are. But to know that all of these items, the funding is already available. So when these are brought to council for purchase, their concern is not, do we have the money or don't we have the money? It's, do we need it? Should we get it or should we not get it? Brief snapshot of our non-fleet replacement fund. This is for items that are non-vehicles on the road, such as our buildings, even equipment, lawnmowers, playgrounds. We have, in the next 10 years, roughly $9 million, 9.3 scheduled to be replaced. And in our information technology is all our computer software. We have $2.5 million. So you're going to yourself, oh my gosh, Brenda, that's a lot to keep in mind. You know, how do you keep it all straight? So what we do is how we keep track of everything and how we make sure we have enough money to fund these when they are due is through our capital improvement plan. So how many of you like puzzles? Who's a puzzle lover? Okay, I've got a question for you. Why do you like puzzles?
You have to think. You have to be able to put things together, work it out. Yeah. Okay.
Great. You'd make a great accountant. That's kind of what we do. That's what the CIP is. It's a big puzzle. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's how we put our plans together. From the CIP plan, what does it do? It helps promote financial sustainability. As I explained earlier, we were able to put our debt-free programs together using the CIP. It also creates transparency with council and with you, the residents, because it lets you know what we plan on doing each year. And how we do that is by we put together a book, rather lengthy, thick, of all the items we anticipate replacing during the years. So if you're ever curious about any of those particular bars and what's making them up, you can go to our CIP plan, which is available on our website. But if you'd prefer or would like an actual copy, because it is kind of thick to print out, all you have to do is contact me and I'll make sure you get one. It also allows for better planning and acquisition financing for our capital improvements and provides for more stable payments and tax rates over a period of time. Now that one can be seen with our fleet and non-fleet plan where we put a little bit aside, the same amount every year. And that way you don't say, okay, we need a fire truck. Okay, our fire trucks are very expensive. Okay, the levy's got to go up for that particular fire truck. Then the next year you see it going down. It's just a nice, even amount put away every year. A snapshot of our uses by year. You can see in the year 2018, we've got over $20 million scheduled to be used out of our CIP. Most of that is for our water treatment plant. This includes all of our capital, which includes our utility, redevelopment, streets. But our normal, after the water treatment plant is planned on being completed, you can see we stay within the $5 to $10 million mark. Now, anybody who's seen one of my budget presentations, this slide is familiar to you. It's taking our CIP and breaking it down by the expenditure source and our funding sources. We do have, in the next 10 years, we have roughly $84 million in our plan. 30% of that, as you can see in the source graph, expenditure source is for our street reconstruction project. But then also tied with that is the infrastructure from water, sanitary sewer, and storm lights. You also see that 15% of that total is being made up by our water treatment plant. So how is that being funded? Well, you notice that 26% of that cost is coming from the utility funds. 14% is from the U.S. Department of Justice for the water treatment plant. And we do have it put in at about 50% for the tax levy. And you go, oh my gosh, you're going to collect that much money from me over within the next 10 years? Well, remember, we put away a little bit every year. We already have a lot of that. And then for the street reconstruction projects, I'm getting tongue-tied, the street reconstruction projects are actually paid after the fact over the next 10 years. So until 2034, these 30% will be paid. From the CIP, what we could do, and you saw it from the what I called the financing plan, we can project out our property tax levy, and that's based off of our debt service, which is our internal and external loans, along with our projected operating costs, which are forecasted using economic indicators. You can see again, we do plan that slow rise in the early years, and those are for basically our street reconstruction projects. And at the year 2024, when we start allocating out this, it's still rising, but that rising is basically cost of living through the economic indicator forecasting. Uh-oh. How do I get back to that last slide? No, that one. Thank you. There you go, technology. All right, so once we put that together, then how we use it for our financial planning is then we take a close look to say, well, everything that we've got listed, how does that look, or how do we look compared to our comparable cities? And from the last CIP that was put together, you can see that our projections for the year 2027 still fall in line with a lot of our comparable cities today. There we go. Questions? You gonna get
'em? Yes, the prior bar graph showing the one prior to that, yes. What is the average annual percentage increase?
The annual percentage increase is when you get out to 2024 to 2027 is basically 3%.
2%?
3.
3, okay, thank you.
I live in a condominium, and we have a homeowners association, about 80 units, and I love the financial projections. It looks like you've gone out 10 years, and I was just wondering if I could get a copy of your manual, and then maybe we could try to implement on a much smaller scale for our condominium.
Certainly.
This is the best financial information I've ever seen. I don't know if the state ever puts out what they're actually doing the way you have done for us today.
Well, thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
And I need that. All right, folks, hold on just a second. I've got to transition my slideshow here. It's amazing that it went that surprisingly slick. You know, I really appreciate that presentation by Finance Director Davitt. She's been with the city now for 3.5 years, and we're so benefiting from many of the experiences and backgrounds and knowledge that she has. Another project that she started to oversee right in year one was an entire software conversion project for the city's financial software. So you think about utility billing, accounts payable, receivable, payroll, salary, utility billing, building permits. All of those are now done with software modules that all interact with each other and help our finance department stay on top of the city finances. And so we had actually budgeted to have an outside consultant help provide a good turnkey project for us in that respect. And we had saved about $100,000 for those outside consultants. And Brenda came in and said, no, let me oversee that. I need a little bit of help with some process mapping and some efficiency mapping. But she, right out of the gate, saved over $75,000 by just taking that project over herself in year one. So I think she deserves another round of applause for that kind of stuff. And how many finance directors smile as much as she does? Most of the time, you know, you walk into the office and they're like this, and they're like, what? You know, and that's friendly. So we're going to do just a brief water update. Really didn't intend to, but we've been getting some questions as of late, and I thought it would be worth just kind of talking a little bit about some of those questions. In fact, I overheard one of the topics as I walked in this morning, and that had to do with softening of our water. Why we're not softening at the source. So I thought, well, you know, and we've also had some email questions, and we see social media posts and things like that, and so we thought, maybe we will take just a little extra time and talk about water. And also I just wanted to highlight, I think all of you saw the first edition of our new layout in our newsletter. We tried to cover our water plant updates to the max, show you some pictures of some of the insides there, tried to make sure we had pictures of the folks that are kind of the boots on the ground so you could start seeing these people more often. I know that they've been introduced to you before, but it's good. I think it's good for you to connect with these folks that are serving you on a daily basis. And so we tried to highlight them in that first newsletter, and then we did do another resident letter, which should have hit mailboxes this last week. And so hopefully you got that as well. But there are a couple issues that we just didn't have time to deal with in that resident letter. Kind of the timing didn't match up, so here we are today. So let's talk a little bit. Questions and topics as of late. Softening at the water plant. What's involved and why aren't we doing that? Okay, we'll talk about that. Bubbly water. I like bubbly water. When people usually ask me about bubbly water, they say cloudy water. I don't like cloudy water. Cloudy water sounds, you know, like the less liked brother of bubbly water. But it is bubbly water, and we'll talk about why is our water bubbly sometimes. pH balance. Somebody contacted the city and posted in social media about a concern with regards to the acidity or the acidic levels of our water. And so we'll talk about that. And then we're going to talk about lead and copper testing, lead and what our latest results have been and what you can do about that. Just while we're getting in those final stretches of getting our water treatment plant back up and online, we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do to make sure you're keeping your water fresh. Okay, because there is some things that you can do yourselves. Plant 1, or we call it the NBCGRS, you know, New Brighton Contaminated Groundwater Recovery System. And that counted for 5 sit-ups right there. First of all, the project's on schedule. It's moving along. It's going well. And we're really proud of the contractors we have on site. We do have one of our bar representatives here, and she'll be involved in answering any questions you might have, and that's Julia Masakovic. She's in the, put your hand way up. Julia is like almost every person that bar hires, very, very humble, doesn't like the limelight at all, but that's why I'm going to bring you up in front here of everybody at some point this morning. You know, like I said, we covered our plant updates in our recent resident letter and our newsletter, and want you to know that we are still planning on transitioning from Minneapolis water to our local water supply system this fall. We're believing that we'll actually be green lighting that plant in September and making the transition likely in October, and that's what our timeline has been for the last 2 years. Many of you have seen this. You should have seen it in your resident letter. That checkered blue line coming down from the top of the picture, of course, that is the connection that we installed a couple summers ago, and that goes right over to the Minneapolis ground reservoirs that are located adjacent to our property. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. We needed a different water supply for a short period of time. Minneapolis has a little over 80 million gallons stored right next to our plant. Made sense to do that. That line now goes into the DCS, the distribution control station that is built. You can see it from the road if you drive by. It looks nice. It's basically the connection point for all water supplies coming in and going out of the city. And then we have our green sand filters, the GCF, the carbon, the granular activated carbon, or the GAC. Those are existing structures. And then the addition that you're seeing come off of that is where the advanced oxidation technology, the AOP technology, will be housed. It's actually installed now. And then, of course, that shows, you know, the blue line then going to the street. That's the water path as it leaves the plant and goes into distribution to your home. So we're doing all of this stuff right now. Digging up dirt, putting up walls. Why in the heck don't we soften and add a softening service to our water plant? Well, there's a couple really good reasons for that. First one's money. It's estimated that it would cost somewhere between $10 and $20 million to add that facility just to the water treatment plant one site. Now, as you all know, because I see a lot of familiar faces, and I know you've been to these meetings in the past, we have wells that are deep, deep wells, Mount Simon Hinckley wells, and we have slightly shallower wells, the Prairie du Chien Jordan wells. We would have to soften both of those well sets, okay? And so the 10 to 20 million doesn't even cover softening of the deep, deep, deep wells. That would be an additional cost. The operation cost, so once you build it, you have to run it. There's O&M, and that's estimated to be $600 to another $1.2 million in operating expenses additional to what we currently have. What that means is your utility bill, your water bill, would go up 65% because the Army isn't going to pay for those things. That is not an eligible expense under our litigation settlement agreements with the federal government. That would be a local cost that would be borne by you. Does anyone here like 65% increases in their utility bills or portions of their utility bills? I don't think so. There would be additional land that would have to be acquired. Those costs aren't included. There would have to be other utility improvements made because softening requires a minimal flow rate. There has to be water processing through the plant on a more continuous basis than is typical for our usage in New Brighton. What that means is we would have to build more storage because we have to go someplace with that water. And as a result, we'd have to even get more land to build other water towers, other reservoirs. And so those are costs, not included in these costs. So you can start to see the magnitude of that request. And then there are some environmental impacts. There is sludge that comes from that process. The outtakes into the system from our water plant aren't big enough to handle what that sludge flow would be. So we'd actually have to capture it and then truck it out of there which means we would start having a lot more trucks on 5th Street going in and out of the water plant. So there are other logistical issues that would then put pressure on that neighborhood in the form of traffic, big traffic, truck traffic, that people probably wouldn't like. And then we have to dispose that sludge or those rejection streams that come out of the softening process, which is a natural part of that softening process. So it's a good question. It seems like it's an innocent question. It's a question with a big, hefty price tag. And I think most importantly, if we tried to add that element to our water treatment system, it would have backed off our construction schedule quite a bit. And keep in mind, our point is to make sure we're providing safe water as soon as we can in the capacity that we do need it. Okay? Bubbly water. Why are there bubbles in my water? Right? Somebody actually posted this picture, or we posted this picture in response to a picture that was posted that looked like the glass on the left. And what you have here is what happens with bubbly water in a matter of a few seconds. So why is there bubbles in our water? Well, as I've mentioned before in this picture, that water coming from Minneapolis, you can see in the upper part of the picture it says Minneapolis Reservoir. Those reservoirs, while they're covered, are quite shallow. When you have cold, cold weather, like we had this last winter, that water in those reservoirs gets very cold. Cold water holds more oxygen. What also puts air into water is pressure. So between pressure and very cold temperatures and cold water, when that water comes to your tap, it's under pressure and it's extremely cold. And so it contains bubbles. There is absolutely no health concern at all related whatsoever if your water kind of looked like that. It's got air in it. I like air. All right. So, and actually I was talking to John Draws, one of our litigators, the other day, and he said, the old debate, does warm weather make ice cubes, or warm water make ice cubes faster than really cold water? Because really cold water has more air in it and warm water has less air in it. He said, I guess that answers that question. I didn't know what he meant, but I didn't want to let him know that I didn't know what he meant. So I said, uh-huh. So, bubbly water. And you know, when water comes out of our Prairie du Chien wells about 400 or 500 feet down, year-round, regardless of what temperature is, if it's 30 below, that water is 55 degrees. If it's 100 degrees outside, that water is 55 degrees. When it comes out of the Minneapolis Reservoir in those cold winter days, like we had a kind of a cold one this year, it's going to be extremely cold and full of air. Okay? Bubbly water. Acidic levels. We had a social media post, and we also had a resident really talked quite a bit with our plant supervisor, Jesse Hartman. Jesse, put your hand up. He's got the driver's hat on. Looks too cool for school. Jesse's great with questions. If you have a concern or a question about what's happening at the tap in your house, you know, whether it's a smell, a color, bubbly water, or whatever, Jesse's great at you know, answering your questions, and he's certainly not above even coming right out to your house. This individual claimed that our pH levels were between 4 and 5, which is quite acidic, and expressed concerns over that. This person also used test strips and took her water samples and test strips to a hot tub vendor for the testing. Please don't do that. Please don't take your water to a vendor who has any financial interest whatsoever in the answer. You can go to the Minnesota Department of Health website, and they list a bunch of credible labs that you, if you wanted as an individual, you want to take a sample of water to one of those labs, cost you $20, $30, and it's a credible lab where they're containing all the variables necessary so there isn't a contamination of the sample along the way and things of that nature. But taking water samples and test strips to a hot tub vendor is probably not the best avenue for you to go. And so if you're interested in testing your own water, there are very affordable yet very credible, valid ways to do that. And so I would just ask that you don't do that. This caused her a lot of concern. You know, she was worried. And Minneapolis tests its water frequently. Typically is running around 9 of a pH level. And the water running through our distribution system typically is an 8.5 to an 8.6. Pretty alkaline, you know, pretty base actually. So if you want to test your water, if you want to know more about it, if you want to feel more comfortable about it, get one of those labs off the Department of Health website. Call Jesse, he'll help you. He'll help you find your way, okay? Recent water test results. As you know, we're keeping an eye on the water. Department of Health's keeping an eye on the water, and so we've been testing. We tested over 60 locations throughout New Brighton for corrosion issues. Specifically, what we're looking at is lead and copper. We want to know if there's too much of that in the water. And we're fortunate, as I've said before, to live in a state like Minnesota where the standards are very strict and stringent, and we want to comply with those to the utmost. 13 of our 60 sites had slight exceedances in lead. And if you'll recall, a couple years ago when we talked about transitioning from our wells to Minneapolis service, we talked about the fact that our distribution lines have no lead in them. Our distribution lines throughout New Brighton are ductile iron, or PVC. They're plastic. Okay? All lead lines in the public service system were taken out in the 80s. Gone. Haven't been there since that time. So you might ask, why then are some of these sites having some exceedances? And it's because the private plumbing within their home likely has lead in the solder. And that lead is what's coming out into the water. And it's at levels that do not pose a health concern or a health risk. But because we're seeing it come up a little bit in our tests, we want to talk about it with you. We want to be very open and direct with you about it. And what can you do? Actually, you can do a couple things if you want. If you're worried, you know, if you're in an older home, it's possible the private connection coming off of the main might have lead in it, or the solder might have lead in it. And what you can do, well, I'll tell you what the city has done, is we've run more orthophosphate into the system. And so that's a chemical that coats lines and seals off things like that. We started doing that last November, but what happens in wintertime with water usage? It goes way down. So people aren't pulling that orthophosphate through the lines. If you're a snowbird and you left the state for 6 months and didn't run your water, that water just sat. None of that coating had a chance to get through your fixtures. So what can you do? Literally run your tap for 30 minutes or until you feel the temperature change. Or 30 seconds. 30 minutes. If you run it typically for 30 minutes, we'll start getting so much revenue we could soften at the source. Oh my God, I just solved 2 problems. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Run your water for 30 seconds. Put your finger under the tap. You'll feel the temperature go from kind of cold to really cold. Once you feel it really cold, you're drawn off the main. You've flushed your system out. And that mitigates the issue. Now, in the event that that's not good enough for you, if you would like it a little more confidence, get a Brita filter. Put a Brita filter on your faucet, or maybe your fridge has a carbon filter in it. That's taking the lead out, if there's any residual left. But literally running that tap will take care of the issue. So older homes, you want to just consider doing that. And frankly, you know, Scott, our superintendent, would tell you, just do it every time. You want the freshest water, don't you? It kind of has a shelf life. It can get a little stagnant. Run your tap for 30 seconds. 30 seconds, and you're good to go. And if you wanted to take even a further step, because some people want more assurance, you can reverse osmosis. Some systems like that will also take it out as well. Very effective way of treating it. But I'm not recommending what you choose to do. I would just run the tap, though, personally. Okay? Any questions? All right, so she asked, what about the smell of the water? What about the smell of the water? What's going on?
It has a smell. It smells
Swampy. Even after you run it for a while? You got one for me, Julia? See, I actually paid her $5 to ask a question that would call. Come on up here, Julia, so people can see you. Julia is instrumental in our entire project out at the water treatment plant 1. So she's not just amazing and going to deliver just an outstanding answer to that question, but she's been working a lot with our local staff, with the Scotts, the Jessies, the people that I've mentioned before. So Julia is a person that you folks should be aware of. She's very important to our team.
Thank you. To answer your question, yes, it likely is due to the Mississippi seasonal changes. You know, we're warming up. There's a turnover that happens every spring and every fall. I would expect that it would go away soon once the changeover has happened, but I'm not as familiar with Minneapolis water either, so that's the best answer I can come up with, but we can talk offline too.
Anybody else have a question? Oh, yes, sir.
Has the water pressure changed at all through these changes?
I don't believe so. Jesse? So the question has been, has the pressure changed at all from when we were on our local supply to when we went to Minneapolis?
So the answer to that question is no. Our towers and reservoirs control the pressure in our system. We've never changed the tower levels as height, so nothing ever changed.
How do you feel right now, Jesse?
Just fine.
Okay, good. So most of these folks hate being in front of crowds. They really do. This is not what they do their job for at all. I don't mind it, as you could probably tell. That's why I have to take advantage of these moments to tease them a little bit. Any other questions that you have? Where we're at with water, where we're going with water? Gentleman right there.
This is for you, Julie. Right here.
You just want to get rid of it.
I want to turn that one off as well. That's good. Sorry, Julie. Thank you.
So as much as I was impressed with the financial discussion and the clarity, transparency, and logic of the finances for the city, and I really was, and I really am. Your discussion of water seems to me to be full of, you know, like the sludge trucks going down Fifth Avenue. That's scare tactics. And as far as I'm concerned, I've lived in Columbia Heights and New Brighton, and I've been with Minneapolis Water, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's already softened at the main plant, and the pipes last longer. You don't have to worry about the plumbing getting, ruining your faucets. And I suspect the piping in New Brighton needs to be replaced more often because the hard water will build up in the city distribution piping. And to me, it's, well, would you rather buy your power from an electric company or buy a generator and do it yourself? Would you rather drill your own well or buy your water from a city system? Would you rather have a septic system or have the city run your sanitary sewer and your storm sewer? Well, folks, we're in a world where cities provide services for their citizens. And to my way of thinking, to make a 71-year-old man have to load 40 pounds of salt into a water softener in his house is kind of a stretch. I would much rather the city take on the job of softening the well water, which, by the way, is very hard. It's about 25 grains of hardness when it comes out of the well. And that the city has built this very high-tech water treatment plant and doesn't include softening, I think is really, they're missing the boat here. Thank you.
I'll take it as a statement and not a question, I guess. Grains of hardness, Scott? He's got a mic. Oh, yeah. Scott's coming up. That's good. Come on up. No, you get to stay.
I don't know if I need this. I usually talk pretty loud. It's the hardness in the water that... Okay, I guess I got to use this. It's the grains of hardness in the water that makes your water taste good. It really does. If you grab a bottle of water you might buy in the grocery store, you look at it, a lot of times it'll say on there, minerals added. That's what makes your water taste good. We want to be on our own system anyways.
What's our grains of hardness right now? I heard 25 mentioned by the gentleman.
Yeah, 25. Jesse, what is it on Minneapolis water? Yeah, and part of the reason Minneapolis does this, it's not to soften the water for their residents so they have the nice soft water and don't have to haul salt. It's part of their treatment process that they go through.
I don't want to name any names, but if you buy salt from certain companies that are just up 35W, they will deliver it and put it in for you. And it might not be $4 a bag, it might be $6. I'm not sure. I have somebody that puts it in my family that lifts it. So, but I know that a lot of people do that if that's really an issue that is a possibility. So it can take that problem away.
Any other questions about water? Otherwise, we'll take a short break and we'll move on to our council panel discussion. All right, folks, thank you. If you have questions, Julia, Jesse, Craig, they're all here.
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you for dedicating your morning to us. We really appreciate it. I'm getting a signal that people can't hear me. So, again, my name is Val Johnson. I'm the mayor of New Brighton, and it's really my privilege and honor to be your mayor. Can't hear? Okay. I have really important words to say here.
Do you want the other mic?
No, I think we're okay now. It sounds better. Everybody okay? Good.
Maybe we're gonna say who's Mike's loudest. Might be one of ours. I don't know.
Oh, I'm looking like, where's that noise coming from? God's talking to me already? Hey, at any rate, the presentations this morning, I hope, just prove to you how well run this city is. You know, Brenda, in her financial report, it's amazing that this city is in the financial shape that it is, especially when you start comparing it to other cities. And when you look at the figures where in the year 2027, when our levy will still be lower than some of the levies that are being assessed right now on different citizens in different cities. It's really a testament to that. The water, oh my gosh, we've become scientists. I mean, anybody on this council knows more about water now than they ever thought they would have to, but it's in great shape. And then, you know, we're going to have some inconveniences with the 35W rollout of their min-pass lane. You know what? We deal with inconveniences. We're New Brighton, and we're going to make it through this, but we're going to keep you informed along the way and make sure that we handle those situations. And we're going to get through it together because as a city, we do things together. And speaking of together, I also have here our council, and we'll just go down the line. I'll let each of you introduce yourself, and if you'd like to say a couple of things, feel free to do that, and then we'll open it up to questions. So Councilmember Berg.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for all being here on such a nice morning. I know that the turnout would have been bigger had the weather not been quite as nice. We've had this in October and March and April. We've had good and bad weather, but thank you all for being here. I am serving on the City Council and as a liaison to the Planning Commission just starting last month. I'm very excited to have changed my liaisonship to planning because we have a lot of stuff going on, and it's so important with our opportunity with the New Brighton School or community, the Korean Methodist Church site. One of the things that was brought out by our by Director Davitt was our planning ahead and growing our tax base, increasing our tax capacity is a really important thing for our community, and that's part of what the planning and EDC really work on. I was speaking to a neighbor, and a house just sold in New Brighton, tentatively sold. I mean, it wasn't sold, but it was on the market and got an offer for $875,000 the day before yesterday. We have only 7 houses in New Brighton that are on the market. People want to live here. So, and there's a reason for it. The reason is that we're doing things like this to be a community. We're working on making sure it's affordable and we have the services, and I'm proud to be part of that. I also am the liaison to the Northeast Youth and Family Services, which is we all serve on a lot of committees. It's an outside group that has mental health services in our community and also does senior chores. So, you can't hear me? I'm so sorry. I was told to stay away from the mic a little bit because I'm so loud. So I also serve on Northeast Youth and Family Services. We know that group has served Mounds View schools, but now it's Northern Ramsey County and all of Ramsey County and even Southern Anoka County for kids to help them with not only the diversion program so they don't get booted out of school, they stay in and be successful, and also mental health services for the family and senior chores so people can stay longer in their homes. So if that's a need, you know someone that might need that kind of help, Northeast Youth and Family Services does that. And I'll finish up with, I'm also on the serving on Metro Cities, which is a lobbyist group for all the suburbs and cities in the metro area to help work, to have a relationship with the legislature and help get our needs met. I could say a lot more, but I'll pass it on. Sorry, I took up the whole time.
You're fine. You're fine. Hi, I'm Emily Dunsworth. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Yes. Yes? My 98-year-old grandmother, who's mostly deaf, says she can hear me. So I usually don't need a mic. Like I said, I'm Emily Dunsworth, and thanks for being here today. I am the liaison to the Public Safety Commission. So I've only been to one meeting so far, but really a remarkable group of people that are looking at all sorts of issues in the community to make sure that we are continuing to have a really safe and vibrant New Brighton here. I'm also the liaison to the Cable Commission. So thanks to CTV for being here. And CTV is going to be undergoing some significant changes in the next year or so with a new executive director coming on. So I'm really excited to be a part of that commission. And it's been a great opportunity to work with the neighboring cities as well. So that is a really fun group to be with. And other than that, I'll turn it over to Council Member Jacobson.
Well, thank you, Council Member Dunsworth. My name is Paul Jacobson, and for those that don't know me, I serve as the council liaison to the Park and Rec Commission. I wanted to say, when I first walked in this morning, Director Pasnick was talking to Scott Bowler over in the corner, so I knew we were going to be talking about safe water, because that was safety and water together. So that was my little joke for today, because but I really wanted to start out my comments by just saying, if you look at the quality of the presentations that took place today, and if any of you were able to go out to the neighborhood meetings that we held back out at Hanson Park and Freedom Park, you'll notice that we have a great staff that provide great value for what we have here in New Brighton. I always like to tell all my friends when they ask me where New Brighton is that this is the best kept secret in the Twin Cities. And the reason that I live here is because it is so well run. When I look out, I ran a few years back on the fact that I wanted to make sure that we had a very stable foundation for this city to go off of that was built for my kids to be able to enjoy New Brighton as well as me. My parents have enjoyed New Brighton. I've enjoyed New Brighton, and I want that to continue for generations to come. And when you look, when we had that financial presentation about how well the foundation is set for this city, that is something no other city does in the state of Minnesota. When you look at the plan for the roads and the road replacement and paying for them out of our own savings accounts, that's something nobody else does in the state of Minnesota. So when you look at value and you look at what we get here in New Brighton, you don't have to look beyond the staff that's still here in the room. From public safety and Director Pasnick and the value that they bring in the community policing that they provide. We're a safe community. When you look at the Director Davitt and the job that she's done in the financial department area, you look at how firm that's made our foundation, and you look, and all it does is roll up to the top with City Manager Lauder and the leadership that he's brought to this city since he's been here as well. I'm proud to be a part of this City Council. I'm proud to represent you. I'm proud to be a part of my peers here in the discussions that we've had lately. And we'll continue to serve and represent you and your needs into the future. Thank you.
Tough act to follow. Thanks, Councilmember Jacobson, for that. Hello, everyone. My name is Graham Allen, one of the two newly elected City Council members this past November. I want to thank everyone that's here for coming out today, especially on such a nice day where you could be doing yard work or other fun recreational activities. And to thank the folks at CTV for broadcasting this, and for those that are watching and curious about what's happening with the city. Thank you for being involved and interested. I serve on the Economic Development Commission for the city. The Citizen Commission, or as a liaison, it's the group that kind of often looks at big development projects, and not that such as like the Northwest Quadrant, or now the Korean Church or the old school building. So we kind of evaluate proposals and sometimes make recommendations to the council to act on certain endeavors. I also serve on the 35W Coalition. We haven't had a meeting yet, but we should this fall. We'll kind of start coordinating, all the different, as we had the presentation this morning, kind of all the different elements that come together for that. We'll be kind of ramping up in this fall, coordinating those efforts. And I serve as a backup if Councilmember Jacobson can't attend for the CPY, or Community Partners with Youth, which is a nonprofit that serves local residents, kids and their families, and providing wonderful programming for that. And I'll take just a quick second to say, as a newly elected city council member, I think my two big takeaways after 5 months, and I would have to say that this is not something new. It's just been reaffirmed that we have an amazing, dedicated city staff. that work for the city tirelessly. They improve our lives pretty much on a daily basis by their dedication and hard work for the city. And so, if you do have questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to them. They're very willing to answer questions and solve problems. And I think they serve us incredibly well. And when you get to see that a little bit more up close, it just reaffirms the things I've known about living in the city. And I also want to, kind of similar to Councilmember Jacobson, want to thank the rest of the council and the mayor. We don't always agree on the issues, but we're all have a very good working relationship, even when we don't agree. And I think that's been a really positive influence on our decision making. And so, and again, thanks everyone for showing up today.
Very good. How lucky am I to work with all of you? So we're going to take questions now. This is an open forum. You can ask any question. I am going to ask, however, that before you ask your question, that you give us your name. So that's, if you can live up to that, we'll take your questions. And then either I'll answer them or we'll direct them down to somebody else on the council here who will answer it. But have at it. Any questions in the room? Yes, and Devin will go around with the microphone. So
I'm Elma Stepanchak, and I would like to know, how do you ever get a hold of telephone numbers of your staff?
Telephone numbers of the city staff?
If you have a question for them, where do you get the telephone number?
Do you have are you online? Do you have internet access?
No, I don't have any of that. I'm 95. I don't use that.
Oh my God, you look great. You know, unfortunately, that's the way things are today, is that most of the information is available online. If you had a pencil, I could give you a phone number. Dean?
Mayor, members of the council, one of the ideas that we've been kicking around, because we do get that question, and even like if you can get to the website, sometimes people don't find it as navigable as some of us, like me, think it is. And so we thought maybe what we just need to do is put together like a fridge magnet of important numbers and just send those out in a round of utility bills or something like that. So that's something that we'll look more into and maybe launch sometime yet this year. And then that way you clearly can see if there's a pothole that's just driving you nuts. I know that's Bill Graham is who you would talk to, but you don't know that that's Bill Graham. That is who you would talk to. So that's just a quick idea.
Which is another instance where the city staff is working for us. They are solutions oriented. If they hear a problem, they find a solution. So thank you for the question, and we'll get to work on that.
Those numbers also are in your newsletter that you get. So if you get that newsletter, the new newsletter, it does list the main numbers there as well.
Yeah, but not the staff.
It won't. We can't list all the staff, but we can get you to the right spot.
Yes.
Yes, my name is Gene DeLon. My wife Kathleen and I are longtime residents of New Brighton, and I would echo the very positive comments made about the city, its leadership, its management, and I guess many people who have lived here a long time maybe haven't had as much of a basis of comparison, but we shouldn't take that for granted, that it's safe, it's financially sound. And I want to give particular credit to the city manager, and not only in terms of his individual role, but I think what we've seen today in terms of the level of professionalism of the presentations, et cetera, is a reflection of, shall we say, the environment that he leads and has created. So we're very fortunate. So my wife and I have lived here for a long time, and we're pleased and proud to be citizens, members, residents of New Brighton. So with that in mind, I have a question about the new development regarding the Global Academy, the charter school from Columbia Heights that will bring about 430 kindergarten to middle school children to the site where United Theological Seminary has been for about 50 years and has been a great, as far as I know, shall we say, resident of the city by any definition. The information I have about the project is from the Pioneer Press and from Sun Focus. And in each of those cases, reference was made to the city being a part of the process whereby the transaction, which is scheduled 4 weeks from now, June 1st, potential closing, and the terminology is that barring any issues from the city of New Brighton, and another was the saying, Sun Focus, that was Pioneer Press, Sun Focus said, assuming the city approves the transaction. So needless to say, this is a strategic redevelopment for the city, a major piece of property and a major resident. And so my question is as to, just as I presume, whenever, for example, in the Northwest Exchange, a major company comes in, there is, in my words, a due diligence process of sorts in terms of wanting to know whether the company is reasonably stable, solid, treats its employees well, et cetera, financially sound. So I'm just wondering as to this transaction where there are a couple of elements here where a charter school will rent or lease from its own affiliate, which is the owner of the property, and $6 million is being brought in from somewhere to invest in this, as to who are the owners and the school itself. I mean, charter schools have a mixed message. I think they're great. I totally support them. But they've had the checkered past in some cases. So thinking again in terms of the long-term presence and contribution of this school, I'm curious as to the city's process for, shall we say, vetting the participants in this transaction, and what's the status of that? Again, given potentially 4 weeks from now, it's a done deal. Thank you.
I'll take first crack at that, and then you guys can join me. I had the opportunity to attend the neighborhood meeting that both the Global Academy and the United Theological Seminary put on the other day. You know, it's a piece of property, and property is sold every day here in New Brighton, whether it's your home or a business. It is not up to the city to determine if they are financially sound. It's up to the bank to determine that, and the lender to determine that. And that piece of property is, I believe it's zoned R1, and it has been used as a school, and it is going to be used as a school going forward. So in terms of vetting the organization or Global Academy, that's really not our job in terms of whether they're financially sound to take that business on. They meet the requirements in terms of being a school going into a school, so we don't see any issues there. Does that answer your question? Kind of? Kind of. Yeah, it's, you know, it would be the same thing as if you were to sell your house. The city doesn't go in and ask the new owner if they can afford that house. It's up to the bank to do that. And the businesses are similar, so we're not doing anything, we don't anticipate any other issues. Now the neighbors and the Global Academy has been very forthright, as is the seminary, in terms of meeting with the neighborhood. And quite honestly, there weren't a ton of people there, I think because the communication to the surrounding community has been so good. You know, they had questions about traffic, and they're a K-8 school, of which they have 9 buses that come in every day. And there's maybe, as the director said, 8, 9, 10 people who will drive in there to pick up their kids for maybe a dental appointment during the day. They've been housed in a strip mall in Columbia Heights, so they're very good at getting kids on and off the bus and getting those buses out of there. So, you know, the neighbors seem okay with it. And they didn't really even have to have neighborhood meetings, but it was what they chose to do to make sure that they could move in and be welcomed. And so I think that the stand that I'm taking as mayor is hoping that this goes through. Now, I don't think anybody on council has seen any of the plans. They're putting in a new gym and that sort of thing. We will be vetting that as we do any other variance or building. But my hope is that we welcome them into New Brighton as a very welcome neighbor, and anytime we can get kids into the system where they're getting a great education, I'm all for it. Others? Graham?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what the mayor said, if you are interested in kind of hearing more about the presentation that the Global Academy will make to the city for permitting purposes, there's a public hearing of the Planning Commission that will kind of review all the applications and those things, taking place Tuesday, May 15th at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers. I'll repeat that, Tuesday, May 15th, at the City Council, City Hall, in the chambers at 7 p.m. if you're interested to learn more.
Councilmember Berg?
I was going to mention that as well. The Planning Commission is the place that it goes through. I also wanted, the question was vetting them as far as their financial stability. We have been noticed that they have 1,000 kids on the waiting list to get in. So I know charter schools come and go. We've had them in this building that have not been successful. However, this school appears to be set for success when you have so many kids on a waiting list to try to get into that school. So it has a very good reputation.
Madam Mayor?
Great. Other questions?
Madam Mayor, can I comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
A little bit. Gene, also to the other part of your question, I think that you were asking is, how involved is the city? Well, sometimes with sales or when people are going to sell, we are well aware. Something is for sale because it's for sale for a long time, and people are very open with us and they're talking to us about what they're planning to do. Other times we don't get quite as much notice. So I think sometimes people think that we know everything that's going on all the time. In this case, I think the sale was fairly quick, or at least the partnering was quicker than we knew was taking place, like some other things that can happen. There are times, and I can use some other examples, if you look across the community where people approach us or they'll talk to us ahead of time about what they're planning to do, but it doesn't always happen.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Mayor Banky.
Just a follow-up question, that has to do with whether or not the farmers market will continue to operate on that site once the purchase is completed.
So again, I will take that one on because I attended that meeting. The question is, and I'm sorry, Bob Banky is a former mayor of New Brighton. The question is whether or not those apartments, which are dorms for the most part for the students from the United Theological Seminary. The plan right now is for the seminary to continue to own. Well, I think the entity that is buying the land will own all of that, and the seminary will continue to lease those dorms from this entity that's buying the property. That has not come before the council, and I know that in particular I have some concerns regarding that. They don't have a location for their new, where they're going to house themselves yet. They're talking about someplace on University Avenue, either 280 and University or closer to the Capitol. And I've always tried to be very upfront with all of you. I have a hard time believing that students are going to want to live in New Brighton and then go to school someplace else. So that's one of the big questions that's going to come before the Planning Commission and before this council. We'll see what happens. So maybe, Mr. DeLon, to answer your question too, they have a closing scheduled for June 1st. They don't have approval from the city on some of this yet. So that may affect how their closing is going to happen. It may or may not.
What was the answer to the question about the farmer's market?
The answer to the question on the farmer's market is that Global Academy would welcome the farmer's market to their property.
When is that?
I'm sorry. Let's wait for a microphone.
Oh, I just got it in the middle of it.
We need it for the cameras.
I just asked when.
Well, the plan, as I understand it, is that they would close June 1st, and shortly thereafter, Global Academy would move in, and the students would start this next fall. Councilmember Berg, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was
Councilmember.
probably motioning to
Okay.
Councilmember Dunsworth about the farmer's market.
If your question is when is the farmer's market?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a different question.
Yeah. The farmer's market is going to, the first market is going to be June 20th. And it will be in the same place, 3 to 7 p.m. And that'll be, again, every Wednesday until the last week, I believe, of September. First week of October, maybe. I'm not positive about the final day, but it'll be every Wednesday this summer, starting June 20th. And it'll be in the parking lot there, as it has previously.
Are you still looking for volunteers?
We are always looking for volunteers, always. So if you are interested in volunteering, I can give you my cell phone number. That's fine. You can get in touch with me, and my phone number is 651-303-4310. So anybody can get in touch with me, and I'm happy to take down your name, and if you're interested in volunteering for that.
Great. Another question? Everybody feels good about what's happening? Councilmember Berg?
May I make a comment?
Please.
And I was talking to Representative Bernardi about this earlier, that the turnout is low, and I think it's possibly because of the weather. But a point was made that people don't come when they're happy, and I appreciated that comment. No, you said, okay, you said that when people are satisfied and they don't have problems to complain. You want to? But just to complete my sentence, and I know there's a mic here for you, I just want to say I appreciate that folks are here, and that we're trying to do the best job we can, and if people are content, they may be less likely to show up here, but we do appreciate everyone that comes just to learn more.
Well, that was closer to what I said, so thank you. I said something to the effect that, it's really good weather out there, but also sometimes when all is well in a community, you don't get as big of a turnout. We find that a lot of times that when legislative stuff is going on, if it's like people are really upset about things, we get bigger turnouts. So possible reason is all is well in New Brighton. And thank you for everyone who came today. This has been an excellent town hall meeting, and I've learned a lot, and I appreciate you holding these, so thank you.
Quick question that has been passed to me about whether the Global Academy will have a playground erected in that area somewhere, if you're aware of anything like that.
Yes. Their plans do include a playground, and that will be presented to the Planning Commission also. Other questions? Gosh. Well, I'm going to go with the fact that everything's going well in New Brighton. We have an opportunity to hear from residents, and we all of us try to react to those needs that we hear. But having a turnout like this really is, I think, a compliment to the work that the council is doing, to the work that the city is doing. Some of the fun things you're going to start seeing, we did approve a big billboard, one of these billboards that have the video going. That will be on this property right over here. What that does is bring, I think it's $88,000 into the city every year. So we continue to look for different ways to have dollars flow into the city that are not taxed dollars or not coming from you necessarily. What else is new and exciting?
Well, you could say the Eagle's Nest and probably comment on that, because
Yeah,
I think
please.
that's made about we spent about $400 and some odd thousand to replace the Eagle's Nest that we've had here for kids for a long time. That was about a 12-year run that had, which is probably about 4 years longer than it was supposed to go. Right now, the new Eagle's Nest has set attendance records to the point to where we've had, I think in revenue through March, $375,000 has come in through the Eagle's Nest.
So I have exact numbers, huh?
Woo! I knew there had to be there. The roundabouts were going to come out.
Number of kids through the structure, 64,250. That's
November.
Yeah.
Since November.
Yes, since November. At a minimum, that does not include children who are members, just those who are paid. So that, or are in parties. Wow. And then let me also bring up the golf course. How many of you are golfers? Oh my gosh, more people should raise their hands and get out to the Brightwood Hills Golf Course. It opened on April 27th. It tied for the latest opening ever. So that's not good. But we need you out there golfing, and due to everyone being so excited on the course and the late opening, April 30th was the highest revenue day ever.
Wow.
League payments rolled in, causing the one-day total to be a staggering $5,900. That's fantastic. We have a question, yes.
One moment.
Do you want to use the mic, please?
Name.
I was asking
Name?
just about Lions Park. I know they did the Lions did such a fantastic job. Is everything completed out there? Are we done there? What's going on?
I'm going to turn that over to Director Fink. And by the way, this is Mrs. Jacobson, Paul's mother.
Thanks, Mom.
Actually, the gravity rail is being installed this week, and the poured surface should be installed in just shortly thereafter. So as soon as we have an update, we'll get that posted on our website, and we'll probably get that out in one of our news updates through the website or through the council. But so it should be done soon, but the gravity rail is being installed just this week.
So what's the status of the turf and having soccer field? And
Yep, so those should be all done and open later this fall. So we're hoping towards August or early September. Everything is growing in really nicely. If you were around for some of those big rains that happened this last summer or late fall when we had those big, huge rain events, anyone who went and looked, thanks to the work that Director Schlichting did, you go up there and you look, and there were these big, huge ponds, and honestly, they drained out so quickly because of the type of pavement that was used. It all drained out exactly how it should, which was awesome. And it was like these fields were beautiful and magic, and they did what they were supposed to do. So we'll be able to have fields that are playable much faster than any of the other ones we have in our system. So they're beautiful. So thank you to the work that he has done to help us be ready, and the turf will be all set and ready to go hopefully later in the fall.
Wonderful, thank you very much. I'm going to do one more call for questions. All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask for your applause for something. 2 weeks ago, Wendy's back there thinking I'm going to ask for your applause for her. No, 2 weeks ago was a major blizzard, right? Didn't our Public Works Department do a phenomenal job on clearing those streets? 3 times they were out, full force. It was fantastic. So. And my motto is, the sun always shines in New Brighton. So thanks to Mother Nature for taking care of melting that snow. All of you have or if you don't have, we've got them available, the little survey. We'd like you to fill those out. If you fill that out, we're going to give you a free lunch. So it's like 4 or 5 questions. And I know, I'm sorry, I'll get right to you. All of us will be available here to answer any additional questions. We'll be hanging around for a while. So have a happy day, and I'll turn it over to you. Graham, you had one more thing?
Yeah, just take a couple minutes just to kind of give folks a perspective of kind of some of the things the council, the mayor, and the staff have done since I've come on, so at least the last 5 months. And I'm going to read this because I've got a newborn 2-week-old and I haven't slept a lot, so I had to write it down because I might forget. We're replacing the emergency sirens in the city, making them more safe and integrated. We're doing more stormwater mitigation. We're increasing our IT staff to better meet the needs of the city. We're working on the Korean Church or the old New Brighton School building to bring in a new development there. We've worked with our legislators legislative representatives on issues related to a railroad bridge, MNLARS getting reimbursed at our driving license center for some of the extra work that's had to be done on elections bills. We've replaced some squad cars. We've approved the billboard. We've set new commissioners into their roles, created or filled a task force related to inclusion. We've approved our road construction for the year. We'll have new water meters going into effect over a 3-year cycle in the near future. They were due as well. We've increased our contribution to the firefighters pension fund. Let's see. We've been working to tweak the website based on user feedback to make it more easier to navigate some of where the information is. We've had several neighborhood meetings. We've passed a resolution in support of the Tibetan community, and our staff has, for the first time in a couple of years, held a respectful workplace training so that we have a staff that is better trained on respecting each other and those kinds of things. That was what I could think of in a couple minutes.
I'm exhausted. Thank you for that update. Very good. Let's have lunch. Thank you, everyone. Don't forget.